Well, hello there. I welcome you to the Illuminated Conversations podcast. I am your host, Brian M. Truskowski with Illuminate. And today, on our fourth episode, I am pleased to talk with Steven Zyskowski. He is a dear friend, colleague in the referral networking industry, and he shares with us some amazing stories about the breakdowns that he had back in 2008 and how that really helped him break through and wake up to some amazing new transformations, creating a new business now that he's been in for 13 years, that he owns and operates, and just the growth through which he's gone through. So stay tuned. It's going to be an amazing show to listen to. Uh, and as always, please like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone that you think may be interested. It's how I keep the message going and sharing the wealth with the world. Thank you all for listening. I love all of you, and stay tuned for the next episode. Be well. All right, Steve Zyskowski, I am so excited to have you on the show today. Steve is a wonderful friend, confidant, colleague, and we've known each other for what, 5 years now, Steve, something like that. He's a wonderful network referral partner in my life. So, Steve, I'm so excited to have you on the Illuminated Conversations podcast today. Thank you for being on the show with me. So, if you could just take a few minutes and just inform the audience a little bit who you are, what you do, and what you bring to the world.
Thank you, Brian. Before I do that, I just want to say I've been a faithful follower and listener of the work that you've been producing. Since you've been producing this sort of content, I love listening to it when I go on my walks, do some exercising, just need to have some clear space and get grounded again. So it's the pleasure is mine to be on your show, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. So thank
Awesome.
you.
That's great. I love that. Thank you for that little plug.
Well, I wouldn't do it if it wasn't true. So about myself, in a nutshell, I'm a product of the last financial collapse that happened, the last big economic downturn back in 2007, 2008. I used to own a mortgage company and was very successful, built all of my business on referrals, great customer relationships, great networking relationships. And then the rug was pulled out from everybody in the economy. Home values fell, people lost jobs. It was just a horrible time, but it was a time that freed me to do what I really loved doing, which was take the skills that I had learned about being a successful networker and referral partner to many different businesses and teach people those skills so they could have as much success as I had in mortgages. I loved the aspect of referring people in the community to my clients, being a central point of contact for them, somebody that they could trust, had their best interest in heart. And so as a result of that financial collapse, I closed my mortgage company, went through a divorce, went through bankruptcy, went through all of these things that I never anticipated happening in my life, but they all happened at one time. And yes, I was knocked down to the floor for a little while. But I was able to, fortunately, through friendships, through reflection, through just, what God gives us, the ability to find a new direction and deliver the passion that I had of connecting people into a business called Cirrus Net. And Cirrus Net is locally led, facilitated referral teams. So to paint a picture for your listening audience, my clients are website designers and estate planning attorneys and financial advisors and commercial insurance people. My clients are your Main Street America business professionals, the salt of the earth, the people that make up our communities, that make our communities great. They're my clients. And what I do for them is I help them sharpen their axes and sharpen their pencils in the world of referrals, of how to make them a great resource in the community, how to make it so they can develop long-lasting relationships that their own clients can benefit from, but also receive referrals from themselves and build their business. So I bring people together in the form of a community, and we get to learn about each other. We share our clients with each other. And it's my 13th year now doing Cirrus Net here in 2021. And my business has gone through a little bit of a change since the pandemic. And but I have this little saying that I kind of came up with, and that change is wonderful because when you can embrace change, you can make bucks. And who doesn't like taking change and turning them into bucks? I do.
Embracing change and making bucks. That's a new one for me, Steve. I like
Well,
it.
that came up really very recently, Brian, and there's kind of a theme of change in my life. I think there was a period of my life that I really wanted like this sense of permanency, or felt like there was a sense of permanency in my life, that I just never wanted anything to change. I had what I wanted. This was the life I built for myself. And then something would happen and say, "Oh yeah, Steve, you tell us about your plans." And then the next thing you know, whatever plans, whatever thing I had going in motion did not come together. And then there was disappointment and regret and depression. And so when I learned how to let go of feeling like I'm in charge, then I feel like I'm more organic and able to respond to things in life, and it doesn't take away from me. It kind of change excites me a little bit. And one of the things I told my kids when they were young, after when I was going through the divorce, I said, "Kids, the only thing you can ever count on in life is change. So embrace the change as your adventure to grow and learn and love in life."
Right. Well,
And my kids are great with it.
the two saying the only thing certain in life is death and taxes, kids. So get used to it, eh? But the other one is, uh, if you want to make God laugh, tell him
Oh.
your plans. I was like, oh,
Yes.
okay, yeah, you want to do that? Well, I don't know. I have a different thought. Let's see what happens, right?
Yeah. So it is fun when we, kid ourselves into believing that we have total control. I think what we really have in life is an influence
Yeah.
in the way our in the direction of our life. But you know, don't get too attached to all your plans,
Right.
right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think there's, and that's something I talk a lot about with people around surrender, and the sort of Buddhism 101 attachment to anything is suffering, right? And people take that and they, oh well, but there's many layers to that idea, right? And so yeah, absolutely, you've definitely made turn lemons into lemonade. But I'm curious if you could share with the listeners, let's dial in. Let's go back to '08.
Yeah.
And let's dial in. What was your experience? Because you went from being a mortgage person, working for all intents and purposes, to being self-employed. And then I know that didn't happen overnight. I've been with you on this journey for a bit and watching the growth happen. But take the people through that journey of the, let's just say, for lack of better words, the oh shit moment that happened, and the ride, and the collapse and the destruction and the rebuild, right?
Yeah, sure. So when I was in the mortgage business, a financial advisor friend of mine said, "Hey, Steve, are you part of any local referral groups, anything like that to grow your business?" And I'd never even heard of the concept. Just like a lot of small business people, they don't know that there are actually groups that exist at local levels to support each other and share clients. So I visited the group he was talking about. I thought to myself, this could be a great way to leverage myself into the community as a resource. And I was off to the races. I just fell in love with it. Referred my clients to people in the group all the time. I would ask questions that uncovered needs, and then I offered to be the connector to make things happen. So I increased my own value with my clients, and uh, and then I got kicked out of this group that I helped start and grow to a really, really big group. We were like the number one group in Michigan.
Is this
And I got,
the three-letter acronym of which should not be named?
yes, thank you. Yes. Rhymes with Shmi and I. But and again, I personally, that all of my marketing, nothing is around slamming another organization. They help a ton of people. But this particular group, there was political undertows that were undercurrents going on. It's just a different enterprise than Cirrus Net. And as a result of the politicking that went on in the group, I went, and this group referred me about $350,000 worth of business every year. And I'm talking bottom line business, not your before net expenses. I'm talking, this is the net profit.
Wow.
350,000 a year was what I was generating in referrals. So when I went out to my mailbox and there was a little letter in there telling me that the group was kicking me out and going to seek another mortgage person, I was not happy.
Wow, let's just pause there for a second. What lack, I mean, I'm not going to be bashing this, but from any organization, if they email you a pink slip, that's just cowardice to me. That's not even like facing and having a conversation. That's really interesting. I've never heard that before. Wow.
Yeah, so it was definitely a shock because I didn't know it was coming at all. And it wasn't just me, it was the financial advisor and the accountant in the group. We all got booted at the same time. And all three of us were really kind of instrumental in growing the group. Again, talking about politics, this particular group just had a lot of cliques in it. And certain clique didn't like the way that certain people were being maybe celebrated in the group. They felt jealous and felt that they wanted to have control of it, and somehow or another they were to do a power end around and blackballed us, and then they put their
Wow.
own people in. So things happen. It was devastating because I locked out of a group that I had built relationships within for 2 to 3 years. uh, and it was very difficult because I really celebrated those relationships with my own clients, and then the next thing you know, I'm locked out of that network, and then going through the divorce and everything else at the same time. It was a super duper challenge. And you mentioned about self-employed. So just a little background: before I opened the mortgage company, I was a banker for 5 years. For a bank in Ann Arbor. I was not the Bank of Ann Arbor, but a bank in Ann Arbor. And I was helping small businesses primarily through the bank, putting the right credit facilities in place for them, the right deposit facilities. But prior to that, I owned a comic book company. I used to be a published comic book writer. So really, I'm 51. I'll be 51 in March. I started professional employment right after I graduated college when I was 22. And only 5 years of my professional life have I been employed by somebody else. All those other years, I've been in charge of my own income.
Got it.
And all of a sudden, I was locked out of the group that was my most profitable relationship. And then the market did what it did in 2007, 2008.
Wow.
So
So
I
you got the TKO punch, huh?
The TKO punch, yeah. Professionally, personally, on every level, I thought I was a complete failure. Why? How could I get kicked out of a group like this? And I think a lot of it also too is, when you're younger, you're a little bit more, I don't
Spry.
know, you're not as aware of how people may perceive you. And so I might have appeared to be a little more confident than I thought, or a little more over the top, maybe as a personality, maybe not as uh, reserved as I should have been, and maybe that created some of the conflict out there as well too. So, but regardless, that was very tough, and yet again, the challenge of closing the mortgage company, the divorce, everything else, these changes, these big things that happened in my life have added up $2 because I do a business now that brings me internal riches,
Mm.
riches from really truly being able to help people, make a difference in people's lives. I'm not dealing with banks and money, because honestly, that's not really what I was drawn to, anyways. That was just a tool to afford me a livelihood. It wasn't something that I was doing out of passion, it wasn't something I was doing out of love for humanity. It was something I was doing because it made really good money and I could help people. But it wasn't like what I do with Cirrus Net. Cirrus Net is a bucket filler, it's a cup filler for me. And it also now allows me to at least take care of myself in life. I can provide for myself, and that's great.
Yeah, I just want to reflect on what you just said. And this is something that I came to a conclusion of many years ago. Not many people do, but for me, happiness is my driver, not money. Right. And that's kind of what I'm hearing you say is that at one point money was the driver, but you had a realization. And now what Cirrus Net is, happiness is the driver. And to sort of quote my lovely teacher and buddy Alan Watts, it's do what you do, never work a day in your life, and find the passions in life, and you'll never work, and the money will follow, right? And that's sort of the metric that I work with, and that's kind of what you're saying in another way as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I have found that I just love giving. And I know that when I do something for another person, that's the first real kind of take notice that they have. They're like, wow, Steve just connected me with somebody that I think I'm going to be able to build a relationship with. You know, certain parts of my world are opening up because this person takes action.
Right.
And, and I think that that's such a huge thing, especially in today's world right now. You know, when people have been isolated and have not had, um, you know, quality interactions with people as much as they used to. When you go out of your way today to create something for somebody, and it really impacts their offline world, and you're doing it all online for them, but it hits them in the offline world, you've hit a home run.
Yeah.
You've hit a home run.
Yeah, it's so easy to just sort of pull back and play the background, but especially like you said, right now, it takes a special person to reach out and say, I care, I listen, I'm interested in helping you out. Like
Yep.
that's very seen these days. Yeah.
Yeah, the other change that happened, Brian, that's added up to bucks. When I say change adding up to bucks, again, it I worked really hard to get processes in place in my current business. There's a lot of structure to what I do. That's how I can do as much of what I do. I run 180 1 hour meetings every year for my clients, and I do it with the same zest all year long. There's really no difference in whether I'm running a meeting at the beginning of a year, the middle of the year, the end of the year. I'm pretty much the same Steve the whole way through because I created a schedule that allowed me to pace myself in such a way where I know that if I do this many, I can deliver it in a certain performance level that my clients need from me. And my business model was always an in-person business model prior to the pandemic. I used to run my business team meetings in the communities where they were located. So if I had a business team in Brighton that I was facilitating referral team meetings for, that meeting would be in person in Brighton in a meeting room somewhere. The meeting room set up, and people are shaking hands and getting to know each other the way that we had always done it. And then the pandemic happened, and I had to take my entire business model online. And I recognized that this wasn't going to be palatable for everybody in my network, that there are people that really feel that the only way that they can shine, or the way that they shine best, is being in front of another person physically. They have to have that. That's what they feel they have to have. What I've discovered is that there's a large part of my business populace and people that are in the network that can just as easily build relationships online that have offline effectiveness. And so I'm attracting that type of person that, you know, likes technology, wants to be super efficient with their time, wants to be part of a community. And the people that I'm signing up now since we've been in the pandemic are just perfect for this.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just knew that I had to unapologetically switch and do this and positively lead people, provide all the same things I was trying to provide in person, but now online, so they could see that this was a viable way to do it.
Yeah.
And I knew I was going to be under a microscope and that people were going to be counting on me to try to hold a space for them. And I absolutely love it. But again, another big change.
Right. Well, I just want to reflect on that. I mean, like you said, the last thing you just said, I'll say first is in any form of leadership, the higher up the ladder we climb, the more skeptics we're going to get by large, right? You know, and in fact, I heard this as a joke, but it's truth is as we become a leader, we get this wonderful shirt and it says leader on the front, but on the back, there's a big old red and white target, right? Because we are literally putting ourselves out there as leaders and speaking our truths. And we have to sort of learn how to field that. The second thing is, you said this a few times now, but through constriction comes creativity, right? Creativity can really only be born in those death processes through the constriction and through the endings of old cycles. And rebirth is never easy. And the last thing I'll say, which summarizes all of that, is you can't stop the wave, but you can learn how to surf, right? Like stuff's happening. The people who are standing there and trying to be Moses and stop the wave are just going to get crushed in the wave of technology, in the wave of progress, in the wave of whatever. But it's the entrepreneurial mind, like you and I, who are grabbing the board and knowing that we're going to fall off the board, right? we know we're going to fall off. We don't know where the wave's going, but we're open to where this thing is riding, right? And so in that, I feel like I've said this before in other podcasts and other calls, but sort of reiterating that for people in transitions, change is inevitable, suffering is optional. I sound like a friggin', I tell you what, one of my previous partners, she used to get mad. She's like, "Oh, you're just a book of all these sayings, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, but they're helpful to people, right? I mean, these little
They're called guardrails. They keep you on track.
they stay in there, right? And so in that, stuff happens, and we just have to sort of make the best out of it, right? And I mean, I'll stop with all the the sayings, but they're definitely out there, but they help people, right? And so it's beautiful for you to have shared that journey with us of what it is. And as I've said in previous call, the journey continues, right? We're going through a transition, and there's going to be another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And
Never
so,
ending.
right. And so if you sort of have that in your mind, it makes it easier, right? So as I sort of said before, is try to find it. It's not always easy to go through transitions, but for me, the more I go through, the easier. I'm like, okay, yep, I know where this is going. I don't know where I'm going, but I know things are changing. So buckle up, Buttercup, and let's see what happens, right? So with that, any sort of a closing statements that you want to make for our listeners as we start to sort of wrap this call?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you just unleashed a lot of stuff that created almost like instant responses in me, and yet I heard everything you said. So, talking about the leadership on the front of a shirt and a target on the back, that's why I was tossed out of that previous organization, right? Because
Right.
the reality is that was something that if you were a president of, you were now under a microscope by others that can critique you and say, oh, he shouldn't have said it like that, or he shouldn't have done it like that. He should have done it like this. Um, which is why uh, attorneys have a wonderful saying that they like to say. It's called familiarity breeds contempt. So an interesting thing about that other model is that all of the members of that other model, many of them might have been the past president or the past vice president or the past whatever, and now they're going to compare what they knew about running that position to how you did it versus what I do now. I'm already the leader of the group. I'm the guy that owns the business, and people are just trusting me. They're not looking to fault with me. They're looking to grow with me. So I think that that's a great thing. And that's why the other thing too, you might have noticed this with Cirrus Net. You might not have noticed this, but I do not build Cirrus Net based on trying to pump myself up and to make people say my name and to idolize Steve Zyskowski. I don't care about that. I don't want to be on the pedestal. People on the pedestal get knocked down. I don't
Right.
want to be on the pedestal. Um, so I don't build Net based on it being all about Steve Zyskowski. It's about the teams. It's about the members. And when you look at a meeting, how much am I promoting myself? Hardly, if ever, any
Yeah,
time.
a minute or two at most out of the whole hour, if that.
Maybe. Yeah. So I think that it's better to let other people promote you.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off of having to do it yourself. And then the final comment is, I think that the message of this podcast more than anything else is really just, embrace the change in your life. Allow yourself to be your life to be organic. Trust in the vibe of the world. We're fed so much fear and negative information in traditional media that people sometimes have a hard time believing that there really is a great vibe that's beating on this planet right now, and mass consciousness awakening and love. And the majority of people are great people that just want to have a great life and want you to have a great life. So if you're going through hardship or change, try to tune into those vibes. And then the last part is those moments of change. You touched on it just a moment ago when you were talking about when the chips are down, when your back's really against the wall, is when sometimes you can find the greatest solutions, the greatest new opportunities that you weren't even thinking about before because you were in your comfort zone. And and I call it forced innovation. That's what happened to me. I was forced to innovate.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many ways of saying it, and you painted it perfectly, right? When we're sitting on the ground, when we hit bottom, we can only go up, right? It's like, let's see what happens out of this, right? So, yeah, and again, this is a wonderful conversation, and I know you and I can go on for many, many more hours in this conversation, but we're going to keep it short just for the mindfulness of the listeners. So thank you again, Steve. This has been an amazing conversation, and it's always a pleasure to speak with you. And thank you to the listeners for tuning in. And as always, please, if you, wow, stumbling over my words.
Subscribe to Brian's podcast, like it for sure, so he can get some great YouTube algorithms, and maybe even leave a comment about what this podcast brought to you. That would be fantastic.
Thank you, Steve. I couldn't have said it any better myself.
You and I have that wonderful relationship, though. And thank you for the time today. And hey, you know what? Make bucks out of change, everybody. Make bucks out of change.
That's a really wonderful perspective. So thank you all for listening. I love all of you. Get out there, make a beautiful, blessed day, and know that change is happening, and it's always happening for a good reason, even though we may not be able to see it in that moment. So,
Beautiful.
all right, be well, everyone. And I love you. Take care.
Thank you, Brian.